Well, did America just suggest that it will allow India to purchase oil from Russia? Because that's the language that was used. The US Treasury has issued what it calls a 30-day waiver permitting Indian refineries to purchase oil from Russia. And that raises a really important question. Since when does India need permission from the United States or from any other country to make energy decisions or any other trade decisions? I mean, we're a sovereign nation. Our energy decisions are our own. What exactly is going on here? Is this a case of American overreach, or is something more complicated happening? That's what we're going to break down very quickly in this video. Remember, like, share, and subscribe. Now, the announcement has come from the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, where he has basically said that Washington has issued a temporary license allowing Indian refiners to purchase crude oil from Russia that is already loaded on ships and stranded at sea. The waiver lasts 30 days and will expire on the 3rd of April this year. According to the US Treasury, this oil can now be delivered to India, sold to our refineries, and processed normally, even if tankers involved are under sanctions. Now, the official explanation from Washington is that this move is meant to keep oil flowing in global markets, but the explanation immediately raises one more question. Why is United States deciding whether or not India can buy oil, or does it think it's deciding that India can buy oil? So, does India need permission from the United States to actually buy oil? Absolutely no. India has also never publicly confirmed that we would stop buying Russian oil at all, nor have we made any formal commitment to halt those purchases. Remember, since the Ukraine war began and there were sanctions brought by the US and Russia and Europe on Russian oil, India has always maintained that our energy decisions are made based on national interest, on energy security, and the need to secure affordable fuel for our own citizens. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar repeatedly said that India will purchase oil from whomsoever makes it most viable for the Indian economy. So the current US waiver is not about granting India permission, because they never took that permission away. It is about US sanctions and how it operates globally. So American sanctions are about the financial markets and the financial institutions, and that is heavily influenced by the American government. Let me tell you how those sanctions work, and that's a bit of a side quest here. So I ask your indulgence. Now, basically what happens is US sanctions operate through two major levers. The one is the dollar system. All global oil trade happens and is paid for in US dollars, which means that those dollar transactions that happen anywhere in the world eventually have to clear through American banks. And that gives the United States some sort of secondary jurisdiction. So if a bank processes a payment from an entity that is sanctioned by their government, the bank could face a fine, that a transaction itself could be frozen, or the bank could be blocked from actually using the dollar system, and banks obviously will take this very seriously. The second part is the insurance and shipping, which is also largely very Western. Now, all the oil market ships globally. They use Western tanker fleets, they use Western marine insurance, which is really important, and of course, Western reinsurance markets as well. So if insurers refuse to cover a tanker or a ship, it cannot move. And that is why US sanction systems often target the insurance providers and the shipping companies, which makes transportation of that oil much more harder. And then comes this waiver. So effectively, it's coming from the Office of Foreign Assets Control of America. And they're basically telling these banks and shipping companies and insurance companies that you will not be punished if you facilitate this transaction. So in this case, it covers Russian oil that's already loaded onto tankers, shipments that are stranded in sea right now because of what is happening in Iran and the war that the US has started with Israel in Iran, and saying that these deliveries can now be made to India. The waiver lasts 30 days. We have to ask ourselves, though, why has the US issued this waiver now? Now, the timing of this decision has less to do with India, more to do with global oil prices and their own domestic politics. So right now, remember, we've said this repeatedly, the Strait of Hormuz, which is run by Iran, largely a little bit by Oman, but mostly by Iran, is choking. And a lot, 20% of global oil, so 1/5 of all the crude oil in the world passes through that strait, and it needs Iran to keep it open in order for it to pass through. So with the entire war happening in West Asia, Iran, Israel, United States, it's created serious concerns. It's created a choke point for oil at this point. And for India, the dependence is even higher because we import 2.7 million barrels per day. Half of that passes through the Strait of Hormuz because, for better or for worse, the United States has encouraged India to actually focus more and more buying from the Gulf because it didn't want us to buy from Russia. And so we had to then focus on buying from the Gulf, although we don't buy from Iran specifically. If the route becomes unstable, global oil prices will surge. If global oil prices surge, who is the biggest buyer of fuel? America. America drives the most number of cars in the world. They need fuel. Their gasoline prices are a very sensitive thing domestically. If the gasoline prices go up, then inflation will go up, and then their people will not be happy. That is not something the Trump administration, it wants to see play out. Now, we must remember here that Donald Trump, while he seems very confident, is facing midterm elections. He is facing some rumblings that's happening within his country about the war that he started. And it does seem from this particular move that they expect that the Strait of Hormuz could be choked for a little longer. They expect that this war that they started, assuming it will be military action that will take place over a few days, will be done like they did in Venezuela. That is not playing out. It's actually turning out to be much longer, and they're preparing for a longer, drawn-out conflict than they may have initially imagined. So effectively, what they're saying is, if India continues to get supply, and since India is such a massive buyer of crude oil, because we also refine and sell to other neighbors in our neighborhood, if India gets this oil, it will keep the prices globally from shooting up. So they're trying to basically make sure that everybody gets some oil so the prices don't shoot through the roof, because domestically that will not be nice for them. Russia has basically turned around and said, hey, Moscow will meet all additional demand, and we will supply quite happily to whoever wants it, because as we know earlier, the oil is now trading at a premium because there are supply issues at place. So we know why all of this has happened now. But it does still leave us with a larger question of Indo-US relationships and the language that the US is using when it comes to India, which doesn't sound nice. Even to any of us who are not sort of plugged into global diplomacy, and we're not reading foreign affairs stories every day, still it doesn't sound good the way they're saying it. So I want to give you one more example. Christopher Landau, who is the US Deputy Secretary of State, was actually in India, and he was commenting on bilateral ties, and he compared India with China, and he said this, right? And he said this as at an Indian event. He basically said, India should understand we're not going to make the same mistakes we made with China 20 years ago in terms of saying that we'll let you develop these markets, and the next thing we know, you're beating us at commercial events. We're going to make sure we do this as it's fair to our people, because we have to be accountable to them, just like the government of India is accountable to its people. So he basically went on to say that we are an energy-rich country. We want to cooperate with you. We will work with you on your energy needs, make sure that they are met in the short and the long term. So effectively, what has he said? And we know that this Trump government has come out and said it multiple times. J.D. Vance has said it. He spelled it out. He basically said that, hey, we asked China to manufacture our laptops and mobile phones, and they figured out how to make laptops and mobile phones cheaper, faster, to a point where they are threatening our country. So obviously, all devices are made in China. Nothing is really made in the US, and that's putting them at a disadvantage. That's the thing that they're trying to solve. And so they're trying to make sure that even though they do business with India, that this is not something that they will allow to happen with India, that they will not allow us to grow to a point where we can commercially compete with them in the market. So no wonder, obviously, the opposition has been up in arms, because a combination of these two statements has not sounded good. Opposition leader in the Lok Sabha, Rahul Gandhi, has basically said Indian foreign policy emerges From the collective will of our people, it should be rooted in history, geography, and spiritual ethos. What we are witnessing today is not policy. Convoluted statement coming from Rahul Gandhi. There's another statement from Manish Tiwari of the Congress who says sanctimonious language and condescension dripping with neo-imperial arrogance. This is a little more to the point. He's basically saying that, this 30-day waiver, the language that's being used, it's very imperial and it's not okay. There's also a statement from M.K. Stalin, the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, where he's basically said that the BJP government looks totally compromised on India's long-standing tradition of strategic autonomy and independent foreign policy. India's dignity in international arena needs to be protected along with our sovereignty and national interests. So there is a fair amount of criticism that the Indian government is coming under, saying, what have you agreed to with the US that is allowing the US to speak to us in this manner, which, like I pointed out in a previous video, no Indian Prime Minister has allowed in the past. Indian Prime Ministers, all of them, have stood up to America at various points in global politics in the past, have taken moral stances that have been fairly risky diplomatically, but they've gone ahead and done it. So obviously the opposition is asking what is going on here. Let me give you the counter argument that's coming from the government. There's one statement that's been made by Dhruv Shankar, who's the executive director of the Observer Research Foundation America. He's also S. J. Shankar's son. Now, with regard to the US decisions on the temporary waiver, he has said that Washington is primarily concerned with the global impact of supply and prices, domestic political consequences of rising fuel prices, which I just explained to you. By allowing stranded Russian crude to reach major buyers in India, the US is trying to prevent further tightening of the global oil markets. He argues that in such situations, large energy consumers, including India, China, and the United States, ultimately have to coordinate and adjust their policies pragmatically to keep the global energy markets stable. So the words that I want to point out here from what Dhruv Shankar is saying, he's saying coordinate policies pragmatically. So he is actually structuring this statement and this waiver from the US as a coordination between India and the US to make sure that markets function smoothly. And that is the counter argument coming from those who argue for the government. But they're basically saying that India is the third largest oil exporter in the world. India cannot, if India's oil needs are met, then the prices will not spike that much and it will not hurt the global economy. So what we're seeing right now is actually the US stepping in to recognize India's importance as a large market on the global stage and recognizing India's importance in maintaining that global market. So that's the flip argument. Now, I'm giving you both of these arguments, and you can decide for yourself which one seems more plausible. Although, even if we were to accept this argument, the question of the language being used by the United States, that uncomfortable question does not go away. The use of words like permission, the use of words like, okay, we have permitted this, or we are allowing this, or we are issuing a waiver, does not sound great. And the reason why it doesn't sound great is because we haven't heard from our own government yet, which is something I've been saying repeatedly. We actually don't have a full clarity when it came to what was agreed to the US trade deal, remember? Because our commerce minister and our external affairs minister kept batting the ping pong back and forth, saying, he will explain, he will explain, he will explain. No explanation has come. So we don't know what we have agreed to, and we've not received a clarification from the government. Plus, ever since this West Asia conflict has broken out, or let's just call it a three-way war, Israel and US versus Iran, we've not had clarity from the government on that either. So I think what is missing here, in my opinion, is clarity from our government on any of these matters, and that vacuum is then being filled by the things that America is saying. And we know that this particular administration under Trump tends to use language that's very harsh across the board. They're not measured, they're not careful, they tend to overstate everything, they tend to use language that's very harsh, and it does not bode well. So technically, what do we know so far? Did the United States allow India to buy Russian oil? No, because we never needed their permission. So what does Washington actually mean by this statement, that they'll relax the sanctions on Russian oil? But why does it sound like that? We're not going to be able to conclusively tell you unless we hear from our own government. And the silence from our government continues again, and we're waiting for some clarity from our government and our ministers. Leave me a comment in the comment section if you believe that, which of these two arguments do you agree with? Do you feel like, that this is a failure of our Foreign Affairs Department or Foreign Affairs Ministry in the way we're handling these situations? Or do you actually feel America here is acknowledging the clout of the Indian market and the size of the Indian market by making sure that we are able to stabilize the global oil prices? So tell me which one you think and how you believe the government should be handling this problem.